In today's show, I'm going to share with you 7 of my favorite features inside of DxO Photolab 8. Hey everyone, welcome into Magnolia Photography SC. I'm Jeff House, a wildlife photographer in Charleston, South Carolina. I recently did a video about DxO Photolab 8 and Lightroom Classic, and I shared with you the 5 reasons for why I switched from Lightroom Classic over to DxO Photolab 8. But you know, I did a video quite some time ago about DxO 8 and whether or not it was a Lightroom Classic killer. And looking back on that video, you know, there were some things that I talked about in that video that I've really come to realize I was wrong. I was wrong. And where I was wrong was when it came to DxO 8. I did not give this program enough credit. Now, of course, I was looking at a trial version at that time, and, you know, I only had a limited amount of exposure to the program. But nonetheless, I had, you know, touched on most of the main features and had a pretty good feel for the program, but I didn't give it enough credit. I truly didn't give it enough credit. And now that I've been using it at the time that I'm recording this show, I've been in DxO Photolab 8 now for about 3 to 4 weeks. And so this has allowed me to get a much better understanding of the program and what it has to offer. Now, of course, this is a pretty feature-packed program, and I'm sure that there is going to be a continuation of learning for me with different features and what it can do with my photo editing. But at this point in the process, like I said in the top of the show, I want to share with you my 7 favorite features, and hopefully this is something that you can benefit from. Maybe there's something in here that will resonate with you. One of the things that I just quickly want to touch on before we jump into those 7 things is I said I was wrong about DxO Photolab 8. And at that point, what I was really talking about were the masking tools inside of Lightroom Classic, right? They're so powerful. Allows you to easily make selections, apply edits to those highlighted selections that you want without impacting anything around it. And it was really a great way to control your edits and really get a lot out of your images. And I still do believe that that is the case. But as I stated in my recent video for the 5 reasons of switching, for me and my personality and my workflow and my editing style, I found that Adobe Lightroom Classic had become an assembly line for me. It was more about how quickly I could get my images into Adobe Lightroom Classic, get them edited, and get them out to share them with the world. And in the process of doing that, my photos were suffering because of that mentality of speed and just get it done and get it through and push it through that process. DxO, as I mentioned in that video, and I'll state again, has allowed me to slow down and reconnect with photo editing and be a lot more deliberate with my edits. And I really think that the quality of my images has gone up in a very short amount of time. And I'm really seeing a lot of benefits coming from this new mentality, this reconnection with photo editing. So if that's something that applies to you, great. Maybe you'll resonate with that. Maybe you're not like me, right? Maybe you're not that type of person that does everything at 100 miles an hour. Maybe you're a little bit more laid back, a little bit slower, and you know, something like Lightroom Classic fits you really well. If that's the case, fine. But if you're like me, where you know you're always rushing, everything is 100 miles an hour, this might be a good option for you when it comes to creating better photo edits of your wildlife. Let's jump in and take a look at the 7 features that I'm loving about DxO Photolab 8. And number 1 is the catalog system. This is another thing that I talked about in my video for the 5 reasons why I'm switching from Lightroom Classic to DxO. The catalog system, I just hated it inside of Lightroom Classic. And quite frankly, I feel that the way they manage the catalog systems, the way Lightroom Classic is set up, I feel like this is something they should have changed a long time ago, but for one reason or another, they haven't. But I hate how restrictive the catalog system is in Lightroom Classic. Now, I talked about this in greater detail in the last video, so I'm not going to go into tremendous detail here. But what we want to take away from it is with that catalog system inside of Lightroom Classic, right, we have to be very careful about what changes we make to our catalogs, our images, and all of those things, because if we don't do it in a very specific way, our photos will not be recognized by Lightroom Classic, and it can cause hours and hours of headaches. I reiterated in that video, yes, if we do make a mistake like that, it is resolvable, it's fixable, but nonetheless, it's still a headache. It still can create hours of frustration, and that is why I hate the catalog system. Let's jump into DxO Photolab 8 real quickly here. Okay, so we're in DxO Photolab 8, and one of the things that I love is it doesn't have a specific catalog system. If we want to see our photos, all we have to do is go into our photo library and navigate to the folder that has our images. So I'm here on this particular folder, and that's my most recent and current images. So if I'm in DxO, that's all I have to do. I can double click on the image, and now it's going to look a lot like Lightroom Classic with the film stripped down at the bottom. And of course, we can just cycle through our images and do whatever edits we want to do to those photos. But it is just so much easier. And again, I don't know why Adobe Lightroom Classic hasn't shifted their software into a system that works more like this. This is just so much better because I can take my images on my computer and put them anywhere I want. I could move them to another external hard drive. I could move them to the internal storage on my computer. I can do whatever I want. I can rename the images. I can do whatever. It doesn't matter. DxO is never going to have an issue with that. There's never going to be a communication problem with that. All I have to do is navigate to the folder that I want my images in, and DxO will instantly recognize them. Number 2, interface customization. Now, you can customize every raw photo editor and its interface to some degree, right? That's nothing surprising there. But DxO is by far the program that I've never seen before that really allows you to do a lot of customization. So we can create a workspace, and then we can create what is referred to as a palette underneath that workspace. So let me give you just a little bit of an example about what I mean. If we go up to the workspaces here, we have DxO Standard, we have DxO Advanced, and you can see that I created one for my Magnolia Photography SC business. So if I click on the DxO Standard and we come over here to DxO, what we have are some basic tools that we'll see right here. And they just drop down if we click on them, and we'll see more about what's included with that specific tool. In the basic, if we just click on these tabs up here, we will get another set of tools. We will get more tools. And of course, we can just kind of go down the list and work through them and make whatever edits we want to do. Then we go to the next tab and we do the same thing. So we just kind of work through the system a little bit systematically. We can also go to the workspace and go to DxO Advanced. And how this is going to differ from the standard is it's going to put all the tools in one spot. Now, I kind of like this and I kind of don't. I like it because all the tools are right in front of you, but what I don't like is it feels a little overwhelming. I feel like when you're using this kind of view, it's very easy to miss a step in the editing process because there's so many tools to kind of absorb and digest. So that was what led me to, hey, what can I do to customize the interface here inside of DxO? And what I discovered was pretty amazing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go to my workspace of Magnolia Photography. And then this has all my tools. And what I did was I set up this workspace of Magnolia Photography, and then I can specifically pick and choose the tools that I want to be part of my editing process. So if there's something that really doesn't apply to me or I don't use, I don't have to add it into those tools. So that's not something that I have to look at or see. And what I do with my particular workspace is there are some tools that I do utilize, but it's not something that you have to utilize with every edit. A lot of these tools, like the lens correction part of the software, that is set to happen automatically. So it's a tool, but I put it down way down here in the bottom of my tool bin so that I don't have to worry about it. Chromatic aberrations, right? I have that on at all times so that every photo that comes in is going to have that process applied to it. I don't have to worry about clicking it or doing anything with it. So those tools I'm using, but again, they go to the bottom of the list because I don't have to use them when I'm making my edits. They're just on and get applied automatically. But let's say we wanted to have our workspace and then we wanted to say, all right, what tools do I want to be used in my workspace? So I'm going to come over to this tab up here called palettes, and I'm going to make a new palette here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this a test YouTube palette, right? That's what it's going to be called. And we'll hit OK. And you can see right now we have this test YouTube palette. And then we can choose what tools we want to be part of our palette. So I'm going to drop this down and I'm going to go, okay, well, maybe I want the channel mixer. I know I want contrast. I want to be able to crop. Let's see, what other tools do we want in here? We're going to do exposure, and maybe we'll do whatever, I don't know, just something here. We'll put vignetting for in here. And so now what we can see is that we have all these tools that we've picked, right? Whatever they may be. But here's where it goes a little bit deeper yet again. This may not be the way I edit my photos. Yes, I use the channel mixer, but it's not the first thing I do, right? Maybe cropping is the very first thing I do. So what I can simply do is click on the crop line and drag it up above the channel mixer. Well, maybe contrast is what I do after I finish cropping. So I'll move that up and put that right underneath the crop. Then what I can do is I can take this whole panel and I can dock it over here to the right like I did with my Magnolia photography. What this does is it really fine-tunes your systematic approach to editing, because now when you go into a new photo to edit it, you can simply work down and work through your list of tools. And what that's going to really help to do is produce more consistent editing results, but it should also help to ensure that you don't miss anything in the editing process. So those are a really great feature that we have here inside of DxO, is being able to customize our interface and customize it pretty deeply. Number 3, I've heard a lot of photographers say, I really don't want to leave Lightroom Classic because it allows me to create collections. So collections inside of Lightroom Classic are something that are outside of the catalog system. So what we could do is we could set up collections on the left-hand side of Lightroom Classic underneath the catalogs where our photos are housed. And we could move photos from our catalog into collections. Now, it's not taking the photo out of the catalog. It's just basically making a copy of it and putting it in a collection. But collections aren't as rigid as the catalog. So it allowed you to quickly and easily view and manipulate your photos inside of these collections. Well, for those of you who really like that feature inside of Lightroom Classic, don't fear, because this is also something that we can do inside of DxO, except it's not called a collection, it's called a project. So I have up here, right, I have all my folders with my wildlife photos, and that's where they are housed, and that's where I edit them and do all of those things. But what I did down here is I created a project, right, or several projects really. And the projects are broken out into the animals and the different bird species that I've photographed. And once I edit a specific bird species, I edit it, it stays in that folder where my photos are housed, but then I drag a copy and put it into one of these projects over on the left-hand side. So if I'm doing some sort of project that I'm working on, some kind of social media post, some kind of marketing thing, whatever the case may be, hey, I need to see some belted kingfisher. photo. So I'm going to come over here to the belted kingfisher, and I can see that I have 59 photos of the belted kingfisher. If I click on that, now I'm going in and I can see everything that I have from a belted kingfisher standpoint. This just allows us to work with our photos in a much different way, but it's super easy. And I just really wanted to show you this because this is one of my favorite features. It's something that a lot of people fear losing by leaving Lightroom Classic, but this is going to be something that will be available inside of DxO 8. Number 4, the Loop Viewer inside of DxO Photolab 8. Now, this is a pretty cool tool that I've never seen before in any photo editor. But if we go up here to the top and we hover over this little circle with the plus sign, you'll see that it says Loop and it has the letter S. Now, the letter S, of course, is the keyboard shortcut for bringing up this tool or closing it out. So if I hit S on my keyboard, you can see it's going to bring up this little box that allows us to move it around the screen to wherever we want to really hone in on specific details of our images. This is a great tool to use when you are applying your noise reduction inside of DxO. And what we can do here is we can change the size of this box by clicking on that left-hand corner. It makes it smaller, or we can make it larger. I prefer the larger window. And then, of course, we can change the percentage of our zooming here. I like to keep it at 100% so that I get the biggest view possible in this window. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to place this on here. And what we can see is we can kind of see all of this noise going on right in this background here. And so what I want to show you here is what happens when I click on the noise reduction. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click on the Deep Prime Noise Reduction, and let's just watch to see what happens inside of that window. But this is a great way to see how it handles the noise reduction and brings detail back into our image. And you can see now that it's applied, what a great job DxO did with reducing the noise, but keeping detail in our subject. So this loop view really allows us to hone in on specific parts of our images that we might be working on, whether we're doing some noise reduction or maybe we're looking at some other fine detail. This is a very useful tool inside of DxO. Number 5. Well, this goes hand in hand with the conversation we were just having, and that is the noise reduction features inside of DxO Photolab 8. They are second to none. I have done all sorts of testing with the different noise reduction programs, and DxO by far is the best that is out there today. Now, there are other great products. There is Topaz Photo AI, which I think is a great product. But as I mentioned in one of my recent videos, one of the things that I did see with DxO in my workflow and my experience was that sometimes after some of the noise reduction, it would leave some artifacting. And it could create some grid-like patterns in the backgrounds of your images. I'm not sure why that showed up, but it wasn't something that you could remove. It was almost baked in to the background of your photos. And so that creates a real issue. There were other programs too. Lightroom Classic has its own AI denoising software, and it did a good job. I don't think it's nearly as good as DxO, but it did a respectable job at any rate. I've used programs like On1. I've tested out their noise reduction. Never really thrilled with what the result looked like coming from On1. But again, it's not horrific. It can get you by, but DxO is by far more advanced. And what's really interesting is DxO just sent out an email to its users letting us know that there is going to be a new version of their noise software coming out in mid-April. So we are on DxO Deep Prime XD XD2S. That is the latest and greatest version. You'll see that there are 4 versions inside of DxO 8, and these are all previous versions of their noise reduction software. I always just use the latest and greatest. I feel it does the best job. I will be very interested, though, to see what the new version, version 3 of the XD 2S, what I'm going to be really interested to see what that has to offer, because the noise reduction is so good. I'm curious how the improvements, what they're going to do, right, to really improve this even further. I can only assume that the noise reduction will get a little bit better, but I'm guessing that the details after noise reduction is applied are probably going to be even better with this newer version as well, because those are the two things that kind of go hand in hand with noise reduction. So can't wait to see that in mid-April, but noise reduction is definitely in my top 7 favorite features. Number 6 is DxO Smart Lighting. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a really great example for you guys for this video, but let's talk a little bit about the DxO Smart Lighting. If we come over here, it's turned off right now, but if we were to turn this on, you can see what happens, right? The photo is getting a little bit lighter in color. Where the DxO lighting really shines is when we have photos where our subject is backlit, right? So when we're in backlit situations, what typically happens is the background will be brighter than our subject, and our subject will appear much darker than what we're really looking for. The DxO Smart Lighting can really help to fix the lighting on our subjects in those situations. But I also find that it's a tool that works really well with the exposure tool inside of DxO, because I can use a combination of DxO Smart Lighting coupled with the exposure to really massage the overall exposure of the photo and get the lighting to where I really want it with the image. Now, sometimes DxO Smart Lighting doesn't have much of an impact at all on a photo, and sometimes it does. So what I recommend to you is when you turn it on, play with the slider here. See what you think, right? Is it doing anything that you like or don't like, and what do you want to do with it? So, I might bring this down just a little bit to like maybe +10, and then I'll work with my exposure slider as well to kind of zero in and fine tune some of those exposure issues. But this is a really, really valuable tool for many of your photos. So be sure to check that out when you give DxO a go. Number 7, let's talk about the tone curve inside of DxO Photolab 8. Now, you're probably familiar with a tone curve. It's probably something that you've seen before as you've gone through a photo editor. There's one in Lightroom Classic and there's one in Capture One, On One, right? All these programs offer this feature, but I think DxO really takes it to a next level when it comes to their tone curve. And I know it recently went through some pretty big upgrades. But when we come in here, what we have is we have an RGB tone curve. We have tone curves for the red, green, and blue channels. And then lastly, we have a tone curve for the luma or the luminance values. We also have presets that we can choose from. So underneath the RGB tone curve, we have light, medium, and strong contrast. And then underneath the luma or luminance tone curve, we have light, medium, or strong contrast. Now, I don't personally like to use the presets, but they're pretty much all the same. So what we're going to do, if I click on the strong contrast here for the luma, you'll see we get this S curve. Well, all of these presets are an S curve. It's just how dramatic the S curve is. So look, if I go to the light contrast, you see we still have an S curve, but it's very subtle at this point. And you can see when we go to the light contrast, the photo is a lot less punchier, right? Doesn't have nearly as edgy of a look as when we go to that strong contrast look. Now, I hate this look, and so I really don't like to use these presets. But the S curve, again, is something that is going to give our photo, it's a good way to give your photo a general edit and a general improvement into the contrast of your images, but it doesn't mean that we always have to have an S curve. So a lot of the times what I recommend to people is look at the tone curve just like you do with any of the other sliders in the editing process, right? We're typically moving the sliders left and right, and we're going, okay, that looks good. That doesn't look good. This is too much. This is too little. And we'll fine tune it to where we want those sliders. No, you can do the same thing with the tone curve. And when we look at this tone curve, what we want to understand is that the right side has to deal with our highlights. The middle is the midtones and the left are the shadows. So we can come up here and we can grab the very top of this, and we can pull this. And this is how we can adjust kind of our white point inside of DxO, is by changing this along the top left. We can also then go, okay, well, what do we want to do with the brightness values here on the luminance tone curve, right? If we move this up or down, we're going to change the brightness of the highlights. If we come over here, we're going to change the brightness of the midtones. And if we come down here, we're going to change the brightness values of our shadows. And we can just manipulate that to wherever we want it. We're going to reset that. We can come over here to the RGB tone curve, and we can keep in mind that we don't just have to use one of these tone curves. We can use all of them. It will stack our edits and apply them to the photo as we make them. Now, the RGB tone curve is a little different from the luminance tone curve, because the luminance is dealing with the brightness levels in the highlights, shadows, and midtones. But RGB is dealing more with the saturation of the colors. It's having an impact on the colors of our image. So if we go into the highlights, anything that falls within the highlights, the saturation and the color values are going to be adjusted when we're on the RGB tone curve. Same thing with the midtones, right? Same thing with the shadows. That is changing saturation, and it's messing with the colors in those areas. We can use the red, green, and blue channels, as I mentioned, to even go deeper with our tone curves. And what we're going to find is, let's just say hypothetically we're on the blue channel. These can be used to add a little bit of a stylistic approach to our photo editing, or they can be used to fix something, maybe a color cast that we have going on in an image. So let me show you what I mean. If we're on the blue channel, if we're looking at this from a stylistic point, we could take the midtones and maybe push them up towards the blue a little bit, right? And maybe we'll take the shadows, or the highlights, excuse me. Maybe we'll take the highlights and we'll drag those towards the yellow or the orange feel. So we can do different things here with the colors to give that stylistic approach. I'm going to reset this because perhaps maybe we have a little too much blue going on, and we want to bring this to a little bit of, more of an orange tone for whatever reason. So if we have some sort of strange color cast going on, this is something that we could utilize to help reduce any of those negative color cast effects. Another cool feature of the tone curve here is we can come over here to the tone picker. We can take this and maybe we just say, okay, I want to deal with the blue on the bird. So I can click that, and if I hold my left mouse button, I can drag up or down and I can make changes. You can see the tone curve right now. I'm on the blue channel, right? So if I were to go up, I could add a little bit more blue in the highlights area. So that is just something that we can do with this tone curve. Let's go to the Luma value. Maybe we'll see just a little better thing here. But if I click on the blue and hold it and we raise it down, you can see a little bit more of what's going on here. It's raising it up, it's lowering it down. So we can get very specific with the tones doing it this way. And then lastly, we have what is referred to as the gamma. And the gamma is more of a control for the midtones of our photo. So depending on how the midtones look in our photo, maybe they look a little too washed out, maybe they're a little too strong. The gamma can be a tool to help manage our midtone part of our image. So it can be really beneficial there to really bringing out some of the detail in those midtones. All right, guys, those are the 7 features that I am really loving so far about DxO 8. Really gives us a lot of control, really makes the editing process pretty straightforward and easy, especially when we get into the interface customization. It's easy to access our photos. We don't have to worry about communication problems about where our photos are and where DxO thinks they are. It's really a tremendous system. And I do plan, like I said a little earlier in this video, putting out a lot more videos about the editing features inside DxO so I can show you a lot more of what this program has to offer. Hey, if you found this video helpful, if you liked the information that I shared with you today, I would appreciate it if you'd give the video a like and also consider subscribing to the channel. As always, guys, I appreciate you very much. spending time with me. You know, you have a lot of other things you can be doing, but taking the time out to check out this video means an awful lot to me. So thank you so much. Good luck in your wildlife. Good luck with your photo editing, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care.